Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try again to make this video right. I tried making this video a few minutes ago and I didn't like it, so I'm redoing it. Okay, so let me go. Okay, so last week I read, well, not last week so much, but week before last I read from 19 through 22 of Deuteronomy. And then my son dropped my phone in the sink with running water, and I had my phone in the rice all weekend. So now I'm going to try to make another video, and I'm down to 11%. Okay. Anyway, so I'm up to chapter 23 in Deuteronomy now. Okay, and the title of this is Persons Excluded from the Assembly. He who has been castrated by having his testicles crushed or his male organ cut off shall not enter the congregation of the Lord. A person of illegitimate birth shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. None of his descendants, even to the 10th generation. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. None of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall ever enter the assembly of the Lord, because they did not meet you with bread, in parentheses, food, and water on the road as you came out of Egypt. And because they hired to act against you, Balaam the son of Beor from Peor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. Nevertheless, the Lord your God was not willing to listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. Okay. Because the Lord your God loved you. You shall never seek their peace nor their prosperity all your days. You shall not detest an Edomite, for he is your brother, Esau's descendant. You shall not detest an Egyptian, because you were a stranger, in parentheses, resident alien, foreigner, in his land. Their children of the third generation who are born to them may enter the assembly of the Lord. When you go out as an army to fight against your enemies, you shall keep yourselves from every evil thing. If there is any man among you... Okay, hi everybody, I'm back. I deleted some more videos, and I hope this thing will work. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so when you go out as an army to fight against your enemies, you shall keep yourselves from every evil thing. If there is any man among you who is ceremonially unclean because of nocturnal emission, then he must go outside the camp. He shall not come back to the camp, but when evening comes, he shall bathe in water, and at sundown he may return to the camp. You shall also have a place outside the camp to which you may go, and you shall have a spade among your tools. And when you prepare to sit down outside to relieve yourself, you shall dig a hole with it, and shall turn and cover up your waist. Since the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to rescue you and to defeat your enemies before you, therefore your camp must be holy or undefiled, and he must not see any indecent thing among you, or he will turn away from you. You shall not hand over to your master a slave who has escaped from his master to you. He shall live among you in the place he chooses, in one of your cities where it pleases him. You shall not mistreat or oppress him. Oh boy, really? There shall be no cult prostitute among the daughters of Israel, nor shall there be a cult prostitute or sodomite among the sons of Israel. You shall not bring the wages of a prostitute or the price of a dog, in brackets, that is, a male prostitute, into the house of the Lord your God as a payment for any vow. But both of these, in brackets, the gift and the giver, are utterly repulsive to the Lord your God. You shall not charge interest to your fellow Israelite, interest on money, food, or anything that may be loaned for interest. You may charge interest to a foreigner, but your fellow Israelite you shall not charge interest, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all that you undertake in the land which you are about to enter to possess. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it, for he will most certainly require it of you, and a delay would cause you to sin. But if you refrain from making a vow, that would not be counted as sin in you. You shall be careful to perform that vow which passes your lips, just as you have made a voluntary vow to the Lord your God, just as you have promised with your own. Okay, I'm smart. I figured out I needed to empty my trash in my phone. So now it should record continuously. Okay, so where was I? Okay, you shall be careful to perform that vow which passes your lips, just as you have made a voluntary vow to the Lord your God, just as you have promised with your own words, in parentheses, mouth. When you enter your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes, as many as you please, but you shall not put any in your basket to take with you. When you come into the standing grain of your neighbor, you may pluck the ears of grain with your hand, but you shall not wield a sickle in your neighbor's standing grain to harvest it. Okay, so let me go down to the footnotes. Verse 2. A person of illegitimate birth shall not enter the assembly of the Lord, none of his descendants, even to the 10th generation. Okay? And it says down here, that is one who was born of incest, an adulterous relationship, or a mixed marriage, in parentheses, a Jew or a Jewish and a Gentile. Okay, and then verse 3, an Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. None of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall ever enter the assembly of the Lord. And it says down here, Ruth, one of the ancestors of Jesus, was a Moabitess, but she essentially became an Isrealite, in parentheses, Ruth 1:16, and married an Israelite, Boaz. Moreover, the rabbis taught that Deuteronomy 23:3 applied only to Ammonite and Moabite men. This teaching was summarized by what became a common saying, and in parentheses, in quotes, an Ammonite is forbidden, but not an Ammonitess. A Moabite, but not a Moabitess, as quoted from the Talmud. So let's go to Ruth 1:16, so we know why exactly she had become an Israelite. Okay. Oops. Okay, but Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. So as you may know, when she said that, she was talking to Naomi, her mother-in-law, who was a Jewish woman. So in that sentence, she is affirming that she's a Jew now. Okay. So that's interesting. So even though she was a Moabitess, she wouldn't even been considered that really, because she's saying, I'm a Jew now. Okay. So that's interesting. So let's go back. Okay. Okie dokie. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, verse 21. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it, for he will most certainly require it of you, and the delay will cause you to sin. But if you refrain from making a vow, that would not be counted as sin in you. You shall be careful to perform that vow which passes your lips, just as you have made a voluntary vow to the Lord your God, just as you have promised with your own words or mouth. Okay? And then it says down here, the abuse of vows was a practice for which Jesus sternly rebuked the Pharisees. There were at least two kinds of abuse which they were rightly held responsible. One, their approval of vows which should have been overruled and rejected because they violated even more important commandments. See Matthew 15:3-6. And 2, inappropriate or hair-splitting criteria for determining the validity of a vow. See Matthew 23:16-22. Okay, so Matthew, let me just copy and paste. That'll be easier. Okay, copy. Okay, Matthew 15, verses 3-6. He replied to them, "Why also do you violate the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition, in brackets, handed down by the elders? For God said, in brackets, through Moses, honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of or insults or treats improperly father or mother is to be put to death. But you say, if anyone says to his father or mother, whatever, in brackets, money or resource that I have that would help you is already dedicated and given to God. He is not to honor his father or his mother by helping them with their need. So by this you have invalidated the word of God, depriving it of force and authority and making it of no effect for the sake of your tradition handed down by the elders." Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. You can't say, well, mom and dad, I'm sorry, I can't help you out because I've already promised that to God. Because how can you even make a promise like that to God? And, well, first of all, do his commandment, I guess, right? Do what is it? It says something, obedience is better than sacrifice, right? It says that in the Bible, that God says obedience to him is more important to him than your making a sacrifice. Okay, so let's go back. Okay. Okay, and then 2, inappropriate or hair-splitting criteria for determining the validity of a vow. See Matthew 23, verses 16-22. Okay. Okay. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears an oath by the sanctuary of the temple, that is nothing, non-binding. But whoever swears an oath by the gold of the temple is obligated as a debtor to fulfill his vow and keep his promise. You fools and blind men, which is more important, the gold or the sanctuary of the temple that sanctified the gold? And you scribes and Pharisees say, whoever swears an oath by the altar, that is nothing, non-binding, but whoever swears an oath by the offering on it, he is obligated as a debtor to fulfill his vow and keep his promise. You spiritually blind men, which is more important, the offering or the altar that sanctifies the offering? Therefore, whoever swears an oath by the altar swears both by it and by everything offered on it. And whoever swears an oath by the sanctuary of the temple swears it by it and by him who dwells within it. And whoever swears an oath by heaven swears both by the throne of God and him who sits upon it. And of course, both of these things from Matthew are Jesus speaking, if you didn't know. So let me go back. Okay, so that was what he was talking about, hair splitting stuff. Okay, and then verse 25, when you come into the standing grain of your neighbor, you may pluck the ears of grain with your hand, but you shall not wield a sickle in your neighbor's standing grain to harvest it. And it says down here, when Jesus and his disciples picked some grain in this manner, they were not charged with theft by the Pharisees, but of doing work on the Sabbath, which was clearly not the case. See Matthew 12, verse 1-6. Okay. Okay. At that particular time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. But when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, you disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read in the scriptures what David did when he was hungry? He and those who accompanied him, how he went into the house of God, and they ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those with him, but for the priests only. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the sanctity of the Sabbath and yet are innocent? But I tell you that something greater than the temple is here." Okay. Let's go back. And it says, and down here, I'm back here, still here in Matthew 12, verses 1 through 6. It says down here in the footnotes, picking grain to eat was not forbidden on the Sabbath. It was ridiculous for the Pharisees to try to equate gleaning for food with reaping a harvest, which was forbidden on the Sabbath. Okay. Okay. So we're going back to Deuteronomy 23. Okay. So on to Deuteronomy 24. Okay. Law of divorce. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she loses his favor because he has found something indecent or unacceptable about her, and he writes a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house. And after she leaves his house, she goes and becomes another man's wife. And if the latter husband turns against her and writes a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends it out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her as his wife, then her former husband who first sent her away may not take her again as his wife, since she has been defiled. For that is an outrage before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance. When a man takes a new wife, he shall not go out to fight with the army, nor be charged with any duty. He shall be free at home for 1 year, and shall bring happiness to his wife, whom he has taken. Various laws. No one shall take a hand mill or an upper millstone used to grind grain into bread as security for a debt, for he would be taking a person's life in pledge. I guess because, if you take the thing that they can make bread with, you take that away, how are they going to eat? So, I guess that's what they're saying. If a man is caught kidnapping any of his countrymen from the sons of Israel, and he treats him violently or sells him as a slave, then that thief shall die. So you shall remove the evil from among you. Be careful during an outbreak of leprosy that you diligently observe and do according to all the Levitical priests teach you, just as I have commanded them. So you should be careful to do. Remember, in brackets, with thoughtful concern, what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the road as she came out of Egypt. When you lend your neighbor anything, you shall not go into his house to get his pledge, security deposit. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you lend shall bring the pledge out to you. If the man is poor, you shall not keep his pledge overnight. You shall certainly restore the pledge, in parentheses security deposit, to him at sunset, so that he may sleep in his garment and bless you, and it will be credited to you as righteousness, in parentheses right standing before the Lord your God. If you shall not take advantage of a hired servant who is poor and needy, whether he is one of your countrymen or one of the strangers, in parentheses resident aliens, foreigners, who is in your land inside your cities. You shall give him his wages on the day that he earns them before the sun sets, for he is poor and is counting on it, so that he does not cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin for you. The fathers shall not be put to death for the sins of their children, nor shall the children be put to death for the sins of their fathers. Only for his own sin shall anyone be put to death. You shall not pervert the justice due a stranger or an orphan, nor seize impound a widow's garment or security for a loan, as security for a loan. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I am commanding you to do this thing. When you reap your harvest in your fields and have forgotten a sheaf of grain in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the stranger, for the orphan, and for the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat the olives off of your olive tree, do not search the branches again. Whatever is left shall be for the stranger, for the orphan, for the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, for the orphan, and for the widow. You shall thoughtfully remember the fact that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I'm commanding you to do this thing. Okay, so I'm down here in the footnotes. Okay, so verse 12. If the man is poor, you shall not keep his pledge overnight. You shall certainly restore the pledge, in parentheses, security deposit, to him at sunset, so that he may sleep in his garment and bless you. It will be credited to you as righteousness, in parentheses, right standing, before the Lord your God. And it says down here, a poor man might have only an outer garment to offer as a pledge of repayment. Verse 19. When you reap your harvest in your fields and have forgotten a sheaf of grain in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the stranger, for the orphan, and for the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. And it says down here, the divine laws for harvesting give a clear picture of how Israel was to provide for the feeding of the poor and destitute. In addition to charitable contributions which were required or expected of anyone who was able, the owner of a field or farm was entitled to everything he could harvest with a reasonable effort. God reserved any leftovers for the poor, who for their part had to put in their own efforts to glean the fields. These laws are examples of charity and cooperation with fairness and the work ethic. Okay, on to Deuteronomy 25. Okay, various laws. If there is a controversy between men and they go to court and the judges decide the issue between them and they judge in favor of the innocent and condemn the guilty, then it shall be that if the guilty man deserves to be beaten, the judge shall make him lie down and be beaten in his presence with a certain number of stripes in proportion to his offense. He may have him beaten 40 times, but no more. He is not to be beaten with more stripes than these, and he is not to be degraded, that is, treated like an animal in your sight. You shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing, in brackets, to prevent him from eating any of the grain. Okay, that makes sense. If brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, the widow of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall be intimate with her after taking her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. It shall be that her firstborn son will be given to the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out of Israel. But if the man does not want to marry his brother's widowed wife, then she shall go up to the gate of the city where court is held to the elders and say, my brother-in-law refuses to continue his brother's name in Israel. He is not willing to perform the duty of a husband's brother. Then the elders of his city will summon him and speak to him. And if he stands firm and says, I do not want to marry her, then his brother's widow shall approach him in the presence of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall answer and say, so it is done to that man who does not build up his brother's household. In Israel his family name shall be the house of him whose sandal was removed. If two men, a man and his countryman, are fighting, and the wife of one approaches to rescue her husband from the man who is striking him, and she reaches out with her hand and grabs the aggressor's genitals, then you shall cut off her hand. You shall not show pity for her. Okay. You shall not have in your bag inaccurate weights, a heavy and a light, so you can cheat others. You shall not have in your house inaccurate measures, a large and small. You shall have a perfect, full, and just weight, and a perfect just measure, so that your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God gives you. For everyone who does such things, everyone who acts unjustly without personal integrity, is utterly repulsive to the Lord. Wow. Okay, I got to remember that one. So, wow. God doesn't call everything repulsive, but there's another number of things that God, as we're reading along, that God has said are repulsive to him. Men lying with men, women lying with women, men dressing like women, or women dressing like women. These are the ones I can remember recently. And then now this one, a person, who it says, what does it say here? For everyone who does such things, who acts unjustly without personal integrity, so in whatever you're doing, whether it's business or whatever, you're cheating other people, you're tricking them, and you're just acting out without integrity. God says that is repulsive to him. Wow. So basically, you have to be honest in business too. You have to be, pretty honest in business and in life. Wow. That's interesting. Because like you think of like, because it says here repulsive, but I'm pretty sure in the King James, what they're really saying is abomination. We think of all the things that are an abomination to God, and if certainly, we always, when you think of abomination, you always think, same-sex relationships. But there are other things that God, that straight people may do, that God is saying that's repulsive, that's an abomination to him. And let me double check, because I'm pretty sure that when in this version, what do you call this? The Amplified version, which I like because it's so plain and straightforward and like really laid out clear for you. It says repulsive. But one second. Okay, so we are in Deuteronomy 25 and verse 16. Okay, so I'm going to do this in King James and see what it says, because I'm pretty sure that's abomination. Let me double check. King James, where are you? Just regular King James. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, verse 16. Yeah. Repulsive is abomination. So here it is in the King James. For all that you do such things, and all that you do unrighteously, are an abomination unto the Lord thy God. Okay, let's go back to Amplified. Now that that's clear. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so verse 17. Remember what Amalek did to you along the road when you came out of Egypt, how he met you along the road and attacked all the stragglers at your rear when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your surrounding enemies in the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance to possess, you shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You must not forget. Okay, how long have I been going? 23 minutes. I'm going to do one more chapter. Okay, so Deuteronomy 26, offering first fruits. And this is something like, I believe in tithing, and I have witnessed God. I have so witnessed God, like, bless me in my tithe. I've witnessed it for real. Like, I remember, it was when my dad was still alive, right? And my daughter was just born, so I wasn't working at the time. And, like, only money I would get, like, my husband and I, when we were together. So anyway, but I wasn't working, so I didn't have any money coming in other than what he brought in. And and my dad would like send me like a $50 check or something, and I would tithe from that. I would give my $5, It's kind of easy, and so it wasn't like a huge sacrifice for me, because it's not like I didn't have, my husband's money at the time. But he, But after that, I was blessed with a job, you know, and I worked there. I worked there for a good 5 years. I was on that job for a good 5 years. It was a good city job, you know, and so that happened. And I remember more recently, I was in a really bad way, and just a really bad way, and I tithed like $50, and I really didn't have much. I mean, I think I had maybe 200, 100, or something crazy. I was like down to nothing, you know, and I tithed, and I remember just like I remember I think I was saying to God, you know, okay, I'm just going to trust you. I'm just going to trust you with this. And I didn't really have it to tithe, but I tithed. Um, you know, I went ahead and tithed, even though and I said I'm going to trust you, God. And let's see, what did I do? I don't know. So I put in $50. $50. Did that mean that I had 500? I don't know. But anyway, but whatever it was, I gave God $50 in church. And that very same day, you know, I was crying and snotting, and someone very close to me, they just gave me $500, and I needed that money. I really needed it. And so, you know, I know that God, and you know, and I think something that I heard a pastor talking about this recently, and I think is true, that we have to keep in mind that when God, you know, says, you know, you give your tithe and offering, because I think it's in Malachi. Yeah, I know it's in Malachi, where he talks about the tithe and the offering. And it says that if you don't tithe and offer, you are stealing from God. You know, because that's something that he demands of us, is to give a tenth. And if you think about it, a tenth is not a ton of money. And he's saying, and it's proportionate to what you have. So if you have $10, God is like, give me one, you know, and then you offer, you know, you give some sort of, you know, offering to, you know, or God is saying, if you have you know, $100, give me 10. That's not a big deal. If you got 10,000, give me 1,000. You know, it's really not asking for a lot, you know, and so God many times God may bless you financially, but I find many times God blesses you in other ways, you know, and God says that, you know, one of the ways that he blesses you, if you read in Malachi, he will rebuke the devourer, you know, and I'm pretty sure that's referring to, like, you know, keeping the devil from messing with you so much, you know, and I'm pretty sure that's what that means. But anyway, it says he will rebuke the devourer. And so I have found that God has blessed me in so many ways. He's blessed me with health. He's blessed me to be in my right mind. He's blessed me to always have a roof over my head and food in my belly and clothes on my back and shoes on my feet, and for my children as well. He's blessed me with family I can rely on. You know, God has done so much for me over the years. You know, God has kept me alive. You know, God is so good. And I know there's many of you here that are like, oh yeah, big whoop. But you know, there's things that I've been through that I don't even feel like I can share online. But yeah, you know, I believe in this God that I serve, because I have a personal relationship with him. Because when I'm praising him, I'm singing, when I'm praising him, when I'm praying, I feel his presence. You know, you know, he's blessed me with youth far beyond my years. You know, yeah, you know, he's blessed me with 3 wonderful children. He's blessed me with, you know, whatever prayers I prayed over him, he has answered. You know, so God blesses you in so many ways, and it doesn't have to necessarily be financial. You know, Okay, so that's my testimony for today. But let me finish this chapter, right? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So here we are. Chapter 26, offering first fruits. Then it shall be when you enter the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, and you take possession of it and live in it, that you shall take some of the first of all of the produce of the ground which you harvest from the land that the Lord your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name, in parentheses presence. You shall go to the priest who is in office at that time and say to him, I declare this day to the Lord my God that I have entered the land which the Lord swore to our fathers to give us. Then the priest will take the basket from you and place it before the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall say before the Lord your God, my father Jacob was a wandering Aramean, and he, along with his family, went down to Egypt and lived there as strangers, few in number. But while there he became a great, mighty, and populous nation. And the Egyptians treated us badly and oppressed us and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried out to the Lord, the God of our fathers, for help, and he heard our voice and saw our suffering and our labor and our cruel oppression. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm, and with great terror suffered by the Egyptians, and with signs and with wonders. And he brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now, look, I have brought the first of the produce of the ground which you, O Lord, have given me. And you shall place it before the Lord your God, and shall worship before the Lord your God. And you and the Levite and the stranger, in parentheses, resident alien, foreigner, among you shall rejoice in all the good which the Lord your God has given you and your household. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce the third year, which is the year of tithing, then you shall give it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the orphan, and to the widow, so that they may eat within the gates of your cities and be satisfied. You shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the sacred portion of the tithe, the sacred portion, in parentheses, the tithe, from my house, and also have given it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the orphan, and to the widow, in accordance with all that you have commanded me. I have not transgressed or forgotten any of your commandments. I have not eaten from the tithe while mourning, nor have I removed any of it when I was ceremonially unclean, in brackets, making the tithe ceremonially unclean, nor offered any of it to the dead. I have listened to the voice of the Lord my God. I have done everything in accordance with all that you have commanded me. Look down from your holy dwelling above, from heaven, and bless your people Israel and the land which you have given us, as you have sworn to our fathers, a land of plenty flowing with milk and honey. This day the Lord your God commands you to do these statutes and judgments, in parentheses, precepts. Therefore you shall be careful to do them with all your heart and with all your soul, in parentheses, your entire being. Today you have openly declared the Lord to be your God, and that you will walk, in brackets, that is, live each and every day, in his ways, and keep his statutes, his commandments, and his judgments, in parentheses, precepts, and listen to his voice. Today the Lord has declared that you are his people, his treasured possession, just as he promised you, and that you are to keep all his commandments, and that he will set you high above all the nations which he has made for praise, fame, and honor, that you shall be a holy people, in brackets, set apart and consecrated to the Lord your God, just as he has spoken. Amen. Okay, so I'm down here in the footnotes. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Okay, so verse 2. that you shall take some of the first of all of the produce of the ground, and which you harvest from the land that the Lord your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name, in parentheses, presence. You shall go to the priest who is in office at that time and say to him, okay, so let's see. Some scholars believe this refers to Jerusalem. Others suggest the tabernacle. That is not to be confused with the annual offering of the first fruits. Okay. Okay. Okay, so verse 12. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce the third year, in brackets, which is the year of tithing, then you shall give it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the orphan, and to the widow, so that they may eat within the gates of your cities and be satisfied. Okay. This is a reference to a benevolence offering given every 3 years, in parentheses, called the tithe of the poor by the ancient rabbis. This was in addition to the storehouse tithe brought to the sanctuary and the pilgrimage tithe used for the expenses of going to Jerusalem 3 times each year. Together, the Old Testament tithe amounted to a third of the total. Oh, wow. So we Christians, we give 10%. But it's looking like here that in the Old Testament days, the Jews really gave a third of the money. Okay. Well, Okay. Okay. Well, I have to read further about that. Okay. So anyhow, that was interesting. And I hope you found it interesting. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I want to just thank you all for listening and for liking. Thank you so much. And I love you. I love you for just watching and just validating that what I'm doing is worthwhile to someone out there. And I want to thank you for the people who follow me and you let me pop up on your feed. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'll be uploading this throughout the week. Okay.